Ladies and gentlemen, do welcome to the next episode of my Safe Bet show. It's a great pleasure and absolute privilege to welcome Sarah Ramanauskas to the show. Hopefully, I have not mispronounced the family name. As born Eastern European, I really have absolutely no excuse. Welcome on the show.
Thank you so much, Martin. It's great to be here, and it's an absolute privilege to join your Safe Bet community. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, the privilege is entirely mine and of the whole community out there. Sarah, and we will come on to that, had a number of very important roles in the industry, but these days you're with Gambling Integrity as well as the Game Safety Institute. We'll come on to that as well. But, and hopefully this is a decent segue, with your being one of the most recognized and most definitely recognizable industry veterans, and I'm genuinely using the expression veteran the nicest possible way, it's really hard to fathom that you would have had life before gambling, but you did. So you studied, I'm told, languages and literature at the Magdalen College in Oxford, of course, and then amongst many other projects that you took on, you worked that caught my eye in your CV, as a project manager for the Eurotunnel. So could you please tell us a little bit more about your formative years? I mean, formative years in Oxford and truly formative years for the Eurotunnel as well.
Thank you, Martin. I don't often get a chance to talk about myself. Normally, I'm talking about safer gambling or responsible gambling or gambling in general. So, just to be able to kind of revisit those very, very early years, as you say, and give a little bit of background on me well, it's actually quite exciting. And I think probably what I'd like to do is just explain how those kind of contributed to where I am now. So yeah, I'm Magdalen, Oxford. English language and literature has nothing much to do with gambling or technology or any of the things that I do now, apart from the fact that it teaches you to get lots and lots of information very quickly, because you have to kind of read Dickens in a week or read Middlemarch in a week. Bring it all together, create a sensible argument, write it up well, and then debate it in a tutorial. So it's good grounding for life in management, life in general, being able to gather information, summarize it, put an argument together, and then write it up. But Eurotunnel was fun but scary. It was looking back, actually. Thank you for the question. It was the Brexit of its day. I'd go to dinner parties and people would say, "So, well, what are you working on?" I'd say, "Oh, well, I work at Eurotunnel," and it was probably a 48-52 split. Half of the people would go, "Oh, we don't need that tunnel. Why are we connected to Europe? Who wants to be connected to the French anyway?" I completely disagree. So that was quite fun. But also I was in charge of the ticketing project, which was really, really important. I was basically making sure that when someone turned up with their car or their lorry to get onto the trains to go to France, that the ticket would work. And if it didn't work, there would be piles of cars and lorries back onto the motorway. So I think it taught me persistence. Whatever's happening, I'm doing the right thing and I'm going to persist and make sure that it works. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you, Martin, in the world of safer gambling, that you do really have to persist and you have to really believe in what you're doing and really believe that it's the right thing to do, and just carry on really and take every day as it comes.
I'm loving the way the themes are already unfolding and taking shape. Reading any Dickens in a week is no mean feat, and being foreign born, I now will have to be even more careful about my pronunciation and my sentence structures on this podcast. And well, that by now very famous, or if you will, infamous B word of Brexit has already crept in. So it's sort of both sad but good to hear that there was Brexit even before Brexit. But on a more serious note, on to the gambling industry we go. By a handful of other jobs that you held down, you landed then a couple. We were talking back 2008, 2010. Now, first a stint with Betfair, where I believe perhaps indirectly our paths might have crossed because I was just about starting there as well. And then subsequently, you were with William Hill. So I do believe that times have changed since, or perhaps that could be a point to debate. But in your own words, here comes the question. What was the online gambling world like back then? In my book, next to no domestic regulation, responsible gambling was sort of about, but not necessarily front of mind. Or do you agree, disagree? Am I getting it all wrong?
Well, I think at Betfair, we were pretty forward-looking. My colleague here at Gambling Integrity, Malcolm Bruce, actually managed to get the words "gambling can be addictive" on the homepage of Betfair. Once it got taken over by Paddy Power and then Flutter, I think those words disappeared. So I think at Betfair we were pretty much ahead of the game. Um, William Hill, I think William Hill just kind of did safer gambling anyway because it was part of their approach to their customers. You could kind of call it old school, but actually I tend to call it more kind of respectful. And I think that's something that really, to me, still divides the industry. You have the operators who like respect their customers and respect their gameplay, and then you have others who are really not so bothered and are just there for the money. So I think, yes, things have changed for the better, without a doubt. The industry now has lots of great people like you and others who really want to see a sustainable gameplay. But unfortunately, I think there are still way too many in the industry who are just there for whatever they can get. I mean, like my moods swing between when I open my newsletters in the morning and I see how many millions being put into a crypto casino where you have to ring customer services to set a deposit limit. I go, why am I even bothering when people are still doing this? And then in the afternoon, I talk to great people like Phil Sherwood at Prize Picks about their ICAP certification and how that has really helped him develop new ideas and push the organization forward. So I think still we've got a long way to go, but it's certainly better than it was in 2008.
It's never a dull day going by. And thanks for the diplomatic answer. At the same time, it was quite telling, if not all telling. You picked up on a critical point, at least in my book, brushing the sentiment about the industry. That's critical as well, but brushing it aside for the sake of my next question. Do you think, projecting yourself once again back all those years when I suppose we both actually happen to have started in the industry, do you think that customers have changed? Or are they still the same? Just the industry reaction, as you just put, is getting at least slightly better or different?
Um, Gamblers are still the same for sure. When I was at Betfair, my team and I developed this behavioral segmentation of gamblers. Um, And what it showed was that these two kind of key types. You had the thinking gambler that was all about skill, using information, making a decision, putting a bet on, thinking about it. And then what we called the natural born gambler that was much more about instinct, intuition. Just, I just want to, I know that Man United are going to lose, so I'm going to bet on that. And I was explaining this segmentation again. I think it was to Phil at Prize Picks the other day, and the Prize Picks guys were all going, "Yep, yep, yep, makes total sense." So I think gamblers haven't changed particularly. Their motivations, the reason they're gambling, the ways in which they gamble haven't changed. But I think the industry has gotten a lot better at tapping into those motivations and let's just say, encouraging people um, to gamble more than they would have done if they hadn't actually had these new products in front of them, like in play, like live casino, and all of the other many innovations we've seen since 2008.
Going through the trajectory of your remarkable career, you, if I may put it that way, sort of had a break from the industry in the early 2010s, having dipped your toes into rather fancy waters of doing research for such household names as Mercedes-Benz, Auto Trader, Sony, a few more. And then you decided to return to what I would call the unsafe haven of the gambling industry. So you started as partner at Gambling Integrity, we'll come on to that, but also as chair of Bet No More. For those, hopefully few out there who may, if you pardon the pun, not know what Bet No More is, it's a non-for-profit social enterprise that provides outreach and mentoring services in the local community for those suffering. I'm definitely reading this, as you can tell, the effects of gambling harm. But in your own words, if you don't mind, could you tell us a bit more about Bet No More, its key projects, and where are they at today?
Yeah, I mean, I was really very fortunate to, I think, just sort of bump into Frankie Graham, who was the founder of Bet No More. I think it was at a Gamble Aware conference. And he was really inspiring with his vision of what could be a really new and effective way of helping those who are suffering from harm. Really by talking to people who knew what you as a gambling addict or as someone who was close to a gambling addict had been through. So with Frankie, we developed really new approaches to ensure that someone could come and get help without necessarily going through the GP, without having to go through the NHS, but to immediately get support from someone who understood what they were going through. And I am so pleased to see that this peer aid process is now really well supported through GamCare. And excitingly, they are rolling it out in Massachusetts as well through the GRIN project. I know you're going to ask me what GRIN stands for, and I can't remember, but it's the same idea. It's basically it's peer aid, and they've been really successful, I think, in transforming the understanding of how to help someone with a gambling problem away from it's got to be a kind of like a formal treatment process to actually let's go into the community and build community strength around supporting people back um, into their communities and away from harm.
Well, they delighted to hear that. I suppose talking about Massachusetts, my spiritual patriot's home. Greetings going out to the likes of Mark van der Linden and Marlene Warner. Very good friends of ours. Gambling integrity. You mentioned the man himself, Mr. Malcolm Bruce. Kindred spirit of ours and a partner, I believe, a managing partner at Gambling Integrity. So your specialization there, and I'm sure you will tell us more, is in assessing and certifying safer gambling programs. You and your team have worked with such, yet again, there's a theme, household names in the world of gambling, the World Lottery Association, NCPG, the Responsible Affiliates in Gambling Group, the European Lotteries Association, and of course the UK Gambling Commission. So just name them all. And I would definitely love to hear from you in that regard what this kind of certification and assessment actually entail, and what is it the operators need to do to pass the muster? In other words, what's the practical impact here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Martin. And I think many people say, oh, aren't these certifications just a sort of a piece of paper on the wall? And there are a number of ways for operators to get these certifications. You can go to one of the big four, like Ernst and Young or PwC, and they'll send along an accountant with some different coloured pens. He'll kind of go, "Yes, you've got that you've got that policy. Yes, you've done that training. Yes, I've seen your training records," which is fine. But that is absolutely not our approach at Gambling Integrity, which means, to be honest, we don't get hired all of the time. But we do get hired by organizations who want to improve. And that's really what we do with certifications. We rock up and we really ask difficult questions, and not just ask, what are you doing or how are you doing it, but suggest better ways of improving processes, of improving messaging. We share best practice, and we really look to try and lift the industry as a whole. And I think, between us, I think Malcolm and I have actually changed things for the better over the last few years. It's interesting when people sort of ask me what I do and I explain. Every single time they'll go, if there's just that, they'll go, "Wow, that's really important. That's really needed." And I think that's something that we do try and do within these certifications. We make it clear that this certification, it's not just a piece of paper. It's about really embedding a culture of safer gambling within your organization. How do you do that? What are the steps you need to take? How do you keep improving? And that's really where we're coming from when we do one of these assessments.
Yeah, I yet again feel your pain with all due respect to her. My own mum still hasn't figured out what it is I actually do for living. So I keep telling her that I talk to people. So it's that straightforward. And we're doing a lot of talking on this podcast, but on a much more serious note. You and Malcolm have definitely changed this industry for the better, and I'm sure that you will continue. I'm gonna go as far as calling it this crusade of yours. Looking back at Gambling Integrity's history, would you mind sharing some of your proudest moments, perhaps? The particular instance or instances where you thought, yeah, we did really well here and it's made a difference.
I think there are lots, but there are lots of little ones. I don't think there's anyone anywhere where I can look back and go, "Wow, we saved hundreds of lives then." But just most of this work is about chipping away and kind of planting seeds, right? So planting seeds of ideas and then seeing them grow. So things like changing responsible gambling to safer gambling. It's still not great. You know, we can have lots of debates about whether even the word safer gambling is useful, but I think it's certainly better than responsible gambling. That's something again that Malcolm and I kind of drip fed in and over a number of different years in different places. So I think overall, I would say that my proudest moments are actually when I hear things coming back to me that I've already said. It means that we're having a general impact on the industry more broadly than just what we do. We're planting these seeds, we're planting these ideas, and then they get spread around the industry within the organizations that want to hear those messages.
First of all, apologies to the viewers for the bulging eyes. I have inadvertently tipped over my mic, but hopefully it's all good. Might have been the word safer gambling. If I may stick to that theme for a brief second, because as you will know, me and the family moved over to the US over 3 years ago, and in my book, with a few notable exceptions, but the operative word in that sentence is a few, nobody would really understand, this side of the pond, what safer gambling means. So is it the case that, as they say, the two nations divided by the same language? Or do you believe that going forward this will change as well? Or because in my book, my Yankee countrymen these days very much sticking and clinging onto responsible gambling as the key
I,
expression.
yeah, I this is a mountain that I continue to climb when I deal with all of my US clients, because the attitude still in the US is, and this is not going to change, it's definitely not going to change now, is that you are responsible for your own behavior. If you have a gambling addiction, that's your problem. You're the loser. There's huge amounts of stigma, huge amounts of shame. But trying to get just, for example, is that if you have a little message along the bottom of the screen that says, please gamble responsibly. Have you got a problem? Dial 1-800-GAMBLER. Putting those two things together at the bottom of the screen simply reinforces people's idea that responsible gambling tools are for people with problems. And that is something that I think I am probably going to be dead and buried before I can try and get any change in the US. It's really hard.
Let's not get that well ahead, but once again, I share the sentiment and feel the pain. I'm sure that the two of us, and especially if Ellen were here, which would be great, the three of us could spend countless hours talking about all these things, but this podcast, sadly, the allotted time tends to be around 30 minutes. And I would be, so if I may move on, that's what I'm trying to say. I would definitely be remiss in my duties of the moderator and my duties to the industry if I didn't ask about your, not a fancy role, of a commissioner on the Commission on Crime and Gambling Related Harms, and of course, your most recent project, namely the Game Safety Institute. So, would you care to tell us a bit more about both of these, with focus, if I may ask, on their origins, objectives, and what the outputs are?
Sure. I know we've got not a lot of time left, so I will briefly talk about the Commission on Crime and Gambling Related Harm. I joined that because actually I'm really interested in prison reform, and in particular keeping women out of prison. And I don't think that women who, for example, have stolen to fund their gambling habits should be put in jail, particularly if they have families, if they're carers. Putting them in prison where there is no support for gambling addiction, no support generally for them when they come out of prison, it's really not helpful. So when the commission was set up, I contacted the Coward League, who are running it, and said, I think I can probably be helpful with this because I understand the gambling industry, I understand the gambling regulations. So I was part of a very august organization, Martin. I mean, we had Henrietta Bowden Jones, we had Professor Gerda Rees, we had a former head of the probation service. I mean, lots of very, very, very snazzy people, and me. And we produced a whole load of recommendations in 2023. But unfortunately, in 2023, the English political scene was an absolute nightmare, and very little of our recommendations have actually been followed. So it was useful. It looks good on the CV. I got to go to the House of Lords quite often, which was nice. But more importantly, I think, really is the Game Safety Institute. And briefly, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to think differently, right? We're trying to swap the lens round. When we're thinking of safer gambling or responsible gaming, we're trying to switch people's thinking away from the individual to the product, and to think about, what is it about the product that can actually be made safer? Because Martin, I don't have to tell you how much time and effort has been spent by regulators looking at affordability, deposit limits, KYC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all about regulating the player, right? What we're saying is, actually, let's delve down into the depths of the product and start to understand how we can build better safeguards within the products themselves, so that really the player can just get on and enjoy themselves.
Well, as I keep saying throughout this podcast, we're in the presence of true gambling royalty. So thank you for all your hard work, Lady Commissioner. Also seem to be talking about exits from prison or from the, sorry, I'm getting political now, from the European Union. I shall digress, but you're definitely one of the best placed people to tackle my next question. Now, you've engaged with the gambling industry in so many disguises and all around the world. So what's your take on its current state, the proverbial world gambling or perhaps even gaming union? A lot of regulatory bonanza still here in the States and down in Brazil and still few places in Europe, but especially from the responsible gambling perspective.
Mhm.
There's still some dark clouds on the horizon, or is the sky now clearing and we might be getting a better view, if you pardon the pun?
Um, well, as I say, I mean, I switch morning to evening from, "Oh, it's all terrible," to, "It's great, things are progressing." Um, I think it's only going to get more complicated and more difficult to regulate gambling products. Um, there are a lot of very smart minds in the industry who are really keen to keep innovating. And whilst that, on the one hand, gives more choice and potentially more entertainment to customers, I just, I kind of throw my hands up when I see things like, um, we've got a new product, betting on marbles. Okay. What? Why? Why are you doing this? Why do you feel you have to have betting on marbles in your online casino? No, or 888 announced they're in Malawi. Why do you have to go to Malawi, one of the poorest countries on earth? So I think what I'm seeing is that you've got regulators in regulated markets going, we need more regulation, we need more regulation, we need more regulation, because there's nothing really effective preventing harm because nobody's using the Game Safety Institute yet. That's www.safer.games if you'd like more information. Um, so you've got regulators trying to do more, but at the same time, you've got gambling operators continually innovating, continually pushing the boundaries, and continually going to places where regulators just aren't keeping up. And in the middle of all of that, you have advertising, which is what keeps regulators awake at night, because when they allow advertising, people who don't gamble see it, causes a backlash, and then they say, "Oh, we have to curtail advertising." And then the operators go, "If we can't advertise, you won't get any revenue." So it's a very diverse and complicated issue, which is why we're all in jobs, I guess. That's why we've got so many newsletters, we've got so many commentators, we've got so many podcasts, because there's always new things to talk about.
I wasn't going to say that, but that's absolutely spot on. Thank you also very much for that very subtle emphasis on the word subtle plug-in. Yeah, the Game Safety Institute. Please do watch this space. Before I give Sarah, not that she would need it, but her 60 seconds to firmly cement her well-deserved place in the Gambling Hall of Fame, you're now based in the City of Lights and Love, in whichever order, namely Paris or Paris. What is it that so far you've enjoyed the most? Are there any downsides? Any post-Olympics hangover still, perhaps?
I must admit, I haven't seen much about the Olympics. The downside is the supermarkets are crap. Just, I so miss Waitrose. And if you want to go somewhere that actually sells things like decent food, decent meat, decent cheese, or whatever, it's so expensive. Like the butcher's around the corner, I went for the first time. System is butchers sort out the meat for you and then give you a little ticket. So I take the ticket and I go to the cash desk and I'm looking at the ticket, and the guy behind the cash desk goes, "Is there a problem, madam?" I just go, it's the first visit to your shop. And he goes, oh, I understand. So clearly everybody goes and gets sticker shock. Apart from that, it's ace. It's great. We have a fabulous apartment. I can literally see the Eiffel Tower. It's just out there. There's lots of parks. The neighbours are really friendly. Don't believe what they say about Parisians. They are super friendly, super nice. And yeah, it's a great place to live. It really is.
So now I'll have to dump the good old joke about Paris and France having the key problem of those two being having a lot of French, but très bien, très bien.
Yep. It's very good.
Vive Paris, vive la France. And now on to the 60 seconds for Sarah to please convey your key messages. Could be about Paris. It could be about last night's Super Bowl. We're filming on Super Bowl and a link to gambling industry. But ideally, it will be about responsible gambling, please.
60 seconds. I have 2 messages. Firstly, regulators. If you are a regulator, insisting that every gambling operator has to put a little message on every ad saying, please gamble responsibly, got a problem, dial 1-800-GAMBLER, that doesn't work. And in fact, it's probably counterproductive. So that's my message for regulators. Operators, you understand gambler behaviour. You know what motivates your players. Use that knowledge of their motivations and their needs to create really engaging messaging for responsible gambling tools. Find out what works. See if it works. Gather the data about it and then feed that back to the regulators so the regulators can make better regulations. So regulators, talk to operators, operators, understand your customers, and let's get a much more positive and useful conversation going on about what really works to prevent harm.
I could be signing this in blood. Let's hope a lot of operators and regulators will tune in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming onto the show. This was the one and only Sarah Ramanauskas. My name is Martin Lycka, and this is the latest episode of the Safe Bet Show, and I truly hope to see you next time.